You are tuned in to What a Baltimore online radio. Please note that the views and opinions expressed are of the host and not of Lady J Media. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's happy to see everyone. Hope everyone is having a wonderful evening so far. It is Wednesday, August 25th. This is a special show of Spitfire poetry mixed with a little bit of unusual favor and everything in this show tonight. We got my brother Walter Murray on as a guest tonight. How you doing, Walter?
Doing just great. Doing just fantabulous.
Good, man. Good. I met Walter about a few months ago at an event, and was speaking with him and his wife, and we all had a good time at the event that we was at. And I just felt I'm a person of feeling and spirit, and I felt a good spirit coming from this brother when we was talking. I had him on my Spitfire show, and he just killed it with one poem. He didn't even do more than he did one poem and killed the show. And then him and his wife spanked us on another talk show that Lady J Lady J did. We're gonna be coming back to that at some point. But happy to have you on, bro, man. I'm just gonna get right into it, Walter. I was saying today is just this show is for our brothers. It's a mental health show where we just have a conversation about mental health. To me, that seems like that's something that's a little difficult for us to discuss at times. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's various reasons of why, but I just wanted to have a conversation to get it out there to let people know that there's help that you can get, or, when we share a bit of our story, maybe that can encourage them to, do the things they need to get some help. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Walter.
Sure. So first of all, I just want to say good evening to all of the individuals who are watching, and also the Dynamite host, and also Lady J. Just give a shout out to her as well too. Even her son, who's doing really great things, I heard. Just all the other individuals that who are on this platform. So just a little bit about myself. I'm Walter. I am a nurse. I'm also a professor. My specialty areas are psychiatry, mental health. Right now, I work with the veterans, which has changed my perspective, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. I hope why my perspective have changed in regards to SUD. SUD means substance use disorder. I hope we really delve into that, and you'll see why. But my experience at the VA right here in Coatesville, getting that opportunity by way of employment and being a care manager for our veterans has really been an epiphany for me, for the individual who suffers with drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and just addictions in general. Also, I do teach. I teach. My specialty areas there is med-surg, mainly mental health, however. I've been teaching for 8 years. I teach for Widener University. And I have also taught at Lincoln University for a semester or two, and also was a part-time professor for one of our local area schools of nursing, which is called Area Health School of Nursing. I do have a beautiful family, as John said, that my wife, who is my partner of 38 years, I got to make sure I get that right, John. You know what I mean?
I hear you, man. I know how we are with those dates. Congratulations. Congratulations on the, you know, we don't want to get you in the doghouse after
Yeah, please don't.
Man. That's something.
I don't want to be in the doghouse. But of 38 years, not of 38 years of marriage, particularly 32 years of marriage, but 6 years. I met her when I was a teenager. And Lady J actually knows us very, very well. She's been a very true, inspiring, inspirational person in my life. When the Bible talks about flesh of flesh and bones of bones, I got it. I really got it. I really understand it. And we have 3 beautiful children. Our oldest is 30. Our middle is 27. And also our youngest, he's 24. He's married. We have 3 beautiful grandchildren. The oldest is 6, then 5, and then 4. And I am a native of Philadelphia. I grew up in the hood, North Philly. I wish I would have grew up in Baltimore, so I could have met some really good friends. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that. They would have probably kicked me out. But just
Baltimore's a rough place. We're loving people, but it's a rough place at times, bro.
Yeah. Yes. But that's a little bit about me.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, like I'm 46, so I never really experienced any type of issues mentally, I believe, until I was in my 40s. You know, I went through some life-changing events that I speak about in my book, Unusual Favor, right? That's available on Amazon. You can pick that up. And in that story, I explain, I talk about things that I went through, things that my wife went through, and how it changed and altered things in our life. You know what I mean? I at one point was dealing with an illness. Like, all of this is in the book, so I'm not going to give it all away, but I am going to do a good outline. In 2013, I found out I had an illness that I had to deal with, and that for me is really what changed everything. Okay, because I stopped working. I was working 60 hours a week at least, you know, and I had to stop working. I had to do some things that was different for me. I have 2 daughters, you know, 12 and 10 now, going on 10. But at the time they were a lot younger. So I had to experience things like, you know, when I stopped working, I had to go and get assistance and food stamps and things of that nature. Now, this is something that was new to me. I've never experienced nothing like that, you know what I mean, in my life. So it was a struggle for me at first, because I felt a certain way as a man. You understand what I'm saying? So when I started to write, because I wasn't working, so I'm writing just to deal and cope with what I was dealing with. And that's actually how the book came about, because I just wrote about some of the things that I dealt with, and I would write a little bit of poetry at times, because that helps me too, and I go back and recite it. But I had to come to the realization that it wasn't just about me. I had to make decisions that was detrimental for not just me, but for my family. So with getting help or going to see a therapist, which at one time to me was like, are you crazy? I'm not going to see anybody. Well, I'm going to talk to somebody for what? What can they tell me? You know what I mean? I don't care about what they got on the wall. What the hell can they tell me about what's going on in my life? But contrary to say, I was wrong. I mean, I was taught and presented to new ideas and ways of handling things. Okay. One thing I like to, one of my favorite ones that I like to say is changing your response. Like when you change the response to a lot of things that come your way sometimes, right? So I had to come to grips with dealing with a lot, and just with going to talk to somebody. That was a lot for me right there that I had to deal with. I really had to go in deep and say, well, look, you need to get your shit together, put your pride aside, and go and talk to somebody. You mess around and do some shit that's gonna get you in trouble or something crazy. You know what I mean? You mentioned the SUD. You said SUD, the SUD. What is the SUD about? You were speaking of earlier.
So SUD is a short. It's basically like the initials for substance use disorder.
Okay.
And so at the VA, we do have a substance use disorder program for our veterans. Outside of the VA, there are a lot of substance use disorder programs. Particularly, you may identify them as rehabs for individuals who suffer with drug and alcohol use. And it's very interesting when you use the term about response and how you respond. I find that we as human beings respond. It's sort of like we respond the way the norm or the way societal norms think we should respond, or they define how we should respond.
Right.
However, when we don't respond that way, or we can't understand why we are not responding the normal way or the normal societal norms, then it becomes an inner struggle, because it's almost like, how am I going to be viewed? How are people going to view me? How are my loved ones going to view me? What are some of the things that are going to be said? And the list goes on and on and on and on, to the point it becomes almost overwhelming. Right. And so the way to respond, which is, I feel that unfortunately is outside of societal norms, is just what you just said. Why would I go see a therapist? Why would I'm not going to, I'm not talking, what do they know about me? Or why should I take psychiatric drugs? Or why should I go see a shrink? Now people are going to really look at me like something is wrong with me.
Right.
So I just wanted just go a little bit more deeper as we have this discussion. And I really thank you for this opportunity. Absolutely. Because what I find is that when an individual is trying to respond to a life-altering event or some inner issues that they don't understand, they turn to the next best friend, which is and can be substances. And that's because substances, believe it or not, John, it is a societal norm. Think about that. It's a societal norm.
Right.
It's normal for us to light up a joint, drink. That's a societal norm. However, when an individual is suffering with a life-altering event and they having problems on, how do I deal with this? This is really hounding me. And I'm not embracing this whole idea of medication, psychiatry, and all of that, because then people are going to look at me like I'm like, whoa. However, but I know one thing, get me a bag of weed, give me some Hennessy, give me some drugs or whatever. At least I'm in the company of people and they make me feel like I'm normal. And so basically I'm self-medicating myself. That's what I'm doing.
Right.
Now, substance use disorder or addictions, how it becomes an addiction is because that thing that makes you feel better, that thing that makes you feel good or whatever, you want more, more, and more, and more until the body really, really craves for it. And that's how an individual kind of like almost goes into addiction. Let me put it this way, then I want to hear from you and even your audience. I hypothetically, I don't know nothing about sports. Nothing. I'm not athletic. You try to talk football with me, I'm gonna be like, or basketball. Again, this is hypothetical. I don't know nothing about sports. However, I know one place that I can go when I'm having like a serious meltdown, when I don't understand what is going on with my life and I'm having that inner pain. I know that down the street here, the pub down the street there, the pub down the street there, they're having the game on, sports night and everything. Everybody's having fun drinking. And I'm going to go right in there and drink. I don't know nothing about sports.
Right.
But I'm there only because it's a normal environment for me. A normal environment for me for medicating my problem. A normal environment for me for medicating my problem. Most people who are addicted or suffer through addictions, they didn't wake up and say, you know, I want to be an addict. So when I think about that, and I'll, as we go on with the show, because I like to give my experience with the VA, why my thought process have changed in regards to individuals who suffer with addiction. But you are, back to your, your comment and responding to that. Responding it's not. I find that it's a lot of barriers to responding what I would say the healthy way.
Barriers, you mean it's more difficult to respond in that way?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's more difficult because you may have an image to uphold, like you just said, a man. There's things that go along with that.
Right.
We're taught not to be weak. We're taught to be strong. We're taught to be whatever, but we're still human. And that's what my poem was, when you allowed me to do that, that's what that was all about. Because it's almost like when I wish I had a life-size mannequin in front of me, but I'll use myself. It's like this part right here, it's almost like we don't consider this as part of the human body. Everything else we consider as part of the human body. So when things are going wrong with everything else, it's almost like we are accepting. We are, oh, pray for me. Oh, we're ready to tell everybody, oh, this. But once something up in here, and again, notice what I said, it's part of the human body.
Right.
So why is it that we have a hard time, like with this part of the human body, and there are specialists out there that help treat this part of the human body, that work with this human body, this part of the human body. There are medications that are prescribed for this part of the human body. But yet, when we talk about getting help, if we need it, if we fall into that realm, then it's like, So that's where the term crazy comes from. Nobody wants to be labeled crazy. That's a derogatory term.
Right.
I don't want to be labeled that.
That's actually an insult to some people, actually. It really is. It's an insult to them. You mentioned something about the I'm gonna touch on it briefly too, because I can go into this part of it all the rest of the night. But with as respect to the churches, I don't think that I was watching a show and one of Lady J shows, I believe, and they were talking about like mental illness and stuff like that. And I don't think that the church is really aware of how to deal with it. Don't get me wrong. There's some churches that are. They may have people that work in the church that's a health specialist, doctor, whatever. But what I'm saying is the traditional old school type of way we were brought up in religion or whatever, is pray for this person and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Put hands on them,
Mm-hmm.
put him up in front of the church, let's shake him up and down.
Mm-hmm.
He's not gonna be an alcoholic anymore. And that's just not, it's helpful in ways for the psyche for us, but a lot of times with that and no work being done after, it's not prudent. You got to put the work in. And when I say the work, I mean going to get the help.
Yes.
You know what I mean? One of the biggest problems that we have is, like you say, being looked at as being crazy or something's wrong with this person because they're going and talking to somebody about what they're going through, right? That to me is like somebody asking a question because they don't understand something and you're saying they're an idiot. There is no question that's dumb. That like I don't, you know what I mean? Like so for us, I don't know. What do you think it's going to take for us to be able to understand the mental issues that we all deal with as men? And I'm not even going. I'm gonna honestly say as Black men. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say as us, as our culture, because of the shit that we deal with and see every day. You turn on the news, you go out in the street, you're raising your family. Like we see and deal with a lot. We all do, but it's different for us as Black men. I can get in my car and go to the store to get bread and milk for the house and may not even come back. You know what I mean? What do you think it will take for us to look at mental health more seriously and not just brush it off to the side, and like it's something that people should just deal with and not get help for?
That's a very, very good question. As one in this profession, and one who is also a part of the church, and I've seen so many various different things in the church, and that's a question that it's really, really difficult to answer. And I'm gonna tell you why it's difficult to answer. Because of what we are taught and what is ingrained in us as humans.
Right.
It's hard when things are ingrained. And let me give you this little example. We are visual people.
Right.
We live off of our five senses. And when something appears to be unpleasant to us, we don't kind of like look at that. We don't kind of like embrace that. Mental health behaviors and the idea and the whole issues, all the issues that are centered around mental health, it almost like is embarrassing or shameful. So you have all of these disorders like depression, like bipolar, like substance use, schizophrenia. These are legitimate diagnoses, legitimate medical diagnoses, John. Legitimate medical diagnoses. A medical diagnosis comes about when something is happening with the human body. And there needs to be studies to deal with it. There needs to be professionals to treat it. And especially if it's a chronic condition where they can have a quality of life to live with that chronic condition. So when it comes to those mental disorders that are medical conditions, that's why I go back to this. Mental disorders, unfortunately, there's not a diagnostic tool or scope or something that you can go in and say, okay, this is what they have. I'm looking at it through the microscope. I'm looking at it through this. I got definitive studies here, whatever, and bam, this is the problem. Whereas though, when you look at all the other disorders or the other diseases of the human body, we have all kind of tools out there that helps us to be able to look at it and diagnose it quickly. And therefore, we were able to treat it. Mental health, unfortunately, it's all behavior. It's all behavior. So a lot of our diagnoses and our studies come from the fact of what is happening with a person over a period of time. What are some of the symptoms they are displaying over a period of time? Or when they get depressed, what is actually happening over a period of time? And so therefore we can be comfortable in putting those diagnoses, and a lot of the medications and treatments have been stumbled on. And because they have stumbled on and it becomes a breakthrough for some mental illness, then it's like, wow, this really, really works. For instance, I'll give you an example. Let's take schizophrenia, which is a psychotic disorder. And so what they stumbled and studied, which is antipsychotics, which help with certain parts and brain chemistry. When you think of depression, you're thinking of another component of the brain. You may have heard of dopamine and serotonin and all of that. You don't take somebody's blood and see what their serotonin levels is. How they stumbled on it, they found this drug or those drugs and say, this drug has this in it. So we give them that and we see them boost up. Then that tells us that, hey, maybe they do have serotonin, maybe they do have this chemical brain, problem. So when you ask the question about what would it take for something traditional as the church, why do you think that Mary, Joseph's wife, what was it about him trying to put Mary aside from the rest of the society? Because that's not normal.
Right.
It's not normal. It's unpleasant.
Right.
Or when Job was going through his issues, and then he had his 3 friends, they trying to like, okay, well, just because you this and maybe you haven't done this and you whatever, not looking at the fact that he's going through this because of sin. Right. So, and then when you think of a lot of other issues, of, a lot of characters in the Bible who appear to have gone through like very low moments, very depressed moments. Yes, God is on their side. I believe that Jesus became a therapist for a lot of people. But again, it's not the norm. Jesus, when he walked this earth and healed people, if you really think about it, John, in society back then, and even if it was in our society now, it probably would not look normal to us. So that's why it's not as embracing,
Right.
Especially for the king to be hanging out with dope dealers and panhandlers. That's not normal.
Right.
And so with church traditions, when these things happen, unless we really, really identify mental illness as a true illness, as a true legitimate illness, and teach it to our young people, allow platforms for them where they're not judged, where they are not told, well, this is happening to you because you don't do this or because you don't do that.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, they can feel comfortable going to individuals and saying, please pray for me that I find the right doctor to help me with my mental illness. As like we will say, please, church, help me. Pray that I find the right doctor for this surgery I have to go through.
Mm-hmm.
See how we are really we are comfortable putting that out there.
Right.
Please, church, help me. I just found out I was diagnosed with this, and I just want the doctor to help me, and please pray that I find, fall in the hands of the right doctor. And you will find, John, that most people, they're not going to be sitting there telling you, well, you should have did this. Well, something is wrong with you. Well, this is a curse. Well, this. They're going to immediately like, oh, let's pray for sister so-and-so. They got this thing, and we know that sin has harmed the body and all that, but you are the master physician and we want them to put it in the right hands. Can you imagine when people are going through mental struggles, if they're able and they're comfortable coming to their brothers and sisters and genuine prayer? And not only that, opens opportunity for those individuals in the church who are therapists, who are psychiatrists, who are psychologists. It allows them to open up those avenues within the church. But I think it starts with, unfortunately, how we truly view mental illness.
Right.
You should do a study on that, John. You should just ask one question to lots of individuals in churches. What is your viewpoint on mental illness? Is it A or is it B? And you wouldn't be surprised the answers that you get.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know that.
So I think it starts with there.
Right. That's something that's like you said, like we're saying though, that is it may start there, but because of tradition, I believe, you know what I mean? Just something that we repetitively do in our culture. Our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents, they were strong. They went through all different types of things that also though has altered the way we live today, the way we look at things today, the way we the way we discipline our children. The way I can't, like when I go, man, look, I was in a Walmart yesterday, and this young lady came in. She had like 4 kids with her, and she was riding on the little chair to come in. And as she was coming in, one of the youngest kids started just to whine a little bit, right? And she's like, she just stopped in the middle of the store and just said, if you don't shut the F up, whatever the child's name is, I'm going to F you up in this store. Like, it just, that bothered the shit. I'm like, really? Like, come on. You know what I mean? So, and at the same time, like I said, who knows what she dealt with growing up, or or what her parents dealt with, or their you know what I mean? It's a cycle that goes on and on and on that we need to break somehow. You know what I mean?
Trauma.
Also,
go ahead. I was going to say trauma. A lot of trauma that we deal with as human beings, and in a lot of the studies that that I've read, and like I said, I teach, and look at a lot of things when it comes to like child psychology, kids that are treated with child psychiatry. You will find when you think of trauma for an individual, you can kind of like go back to childhood. You will find that there are a lot of things that is quite traumatizing to the young mind that kind of like almost sets the tone for them for a lifetime.
Yep, I agree 100%.
The rest of the lifetime. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I am one who is or was a very, very passive person. Very, very passive. That's not good.
Mhm.
Not only that, I was also one who would shut down in the heat of a moment when something that needs to be addressed.
Mhm.
When you talk about handling conflict.
Mhm.
And what I learned from a therapist one day as I sat in therapy, and I began to explain to her, you know, issues and things of that sort. And she looked at me, and I'm a psychiatric nurse. She looked at me, she said, Walter, you know, you suffer with PTSD. I'm like, okay, all right. She's telling me I suffer with PTSD. I know a lot about PTSD. You know, what did she mean? I said, can you explain? She says, you have been traumatized as a child. She said, you watched your parents argue, fight, or whatever at a very, very young age. That left a very devastating impression on you, to the point that when it comes to conflict, when it comes to dealing with issues, you run from it, which is not good.
Mhm.
And so therefore, you know, when I think of a lot of issues in my life in regards to when I think of my marriage, things that had to be dealt with, I would run from it. Even, you know, issues with my children, you know, again, trying to avoid arguments, trying to be that peacekeeper, which is not good. It's being stepped over like a mat, you know, not standing up for what, you know, what's right, you know. And that's all because I don't like conflict. I never, you know, I don't like arguments. I don't like conflict. I don't like to get into those types of things. John, I was the type of kid, I know your audience is going to laugh at this. I was the type of kid, and I know you're going to bust out laughing too when I tell you this. I was the type of kid when another kid looked at me and said, after school, we're going to fight after school.
Mhm.
I was the type of kid waited till all the kids left, looked out the window, make sure there were no kids, make sure I didn't see that person. Wait till everybody go home, and then I went on home. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't that type of person.
Right.
You know? And
wow.
So,
you know that's interesting because what you just said, because on the flip side for me, I realized through therapy that because I have a therapist and a psychiatrist. All right. Had them for since 2013 now. Because of a traumatizing event that happened in 2013 that altered and changed everything. Right? So it was all new to me. And growing up, I saw my father making sure everything. My mom worked too. She used to be she's a retired daycare provider. But my dad, he worked, he made sure everything was straight. You know what I mean? The bills were straight, whatever. You know. So me as a child looking at that, now as a grown man, when I was faced with my traumatization, I'm like, shit, how am I going to pay the mortgage, the car note, make sure the girls got school? You know what I mean? Like, I got a wife. How am I going to, you know what I mean? And that shit will just really, you know, like I contemplated, I'm 46. This started in I was in my late 30s, like 37, when I was first diagnosed with an illness that I don't even want to say, because I want you guys to get the book and learn about that. But it's something that's not life threatening enough, and I can live and deal with it. But for me mentally, I had to change everything: my diet, my work, things that I was doing every day. You know what I mean? So that looking at my father as a strong alpha male growing up all my life, and then being who I am, working and making sure that stuff was straight in our house too, because me and my wife both were working hard at the time. And then for everything to change, I was going through all types of emotions. Then I was taking medication too for the illness. At first, I was on a steroid. You know what I mean? I had to deal with a lot, and I did start going to church. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was broken at a
Mm-hmm.
point where though I just started going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it did help me in ways. There's other ways where I saw some things that I thought were ridiculous, but that's just life. That's just what it is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, I appreciate the time that I spent and that I still do pray and things like that, because I don't think if I wasn't broken at that point and didn't go to a church and do different things, I may not have been able to deal with it other than the therapy and things of that nature, because I learned how to just build a relationship with God and not all the other bullshit that comes with religion. You know, I'm gonna be honest with you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Nobody talks about the pressures of environment, generational living in the ghetto took its toll on Black men. Absolutely, absolutely, Keith Scott. Yeah, it does take wow. That's major right there, because it does take a toll on our whole mentality.
It does take a toll, especially from the standpoint of when you think about the family unit.
Yeah.
This is where I feel sorry for a lot of the baby boomers. And when I say baby boomers, I mean the Black men, which is like our fathers.
Right.
When you think about what they dealt with and what they had to deal with, and watch their families being torn apart, whether through Vietnam era, whether being murdered through civil rights, lynchings, and all of that, even to the point where, as though when you think of the economical struggles for them, you know, trying to provide food for your for your table and all of that, it becomes, you don't realize it's like a cycle that's going to develop another cycle, and then another cycle that's going to develop another cycle, you know. And what I find is that I have a book called Post-Traumatic Slavery that I have read. Unfortunately I wish I had it so I can show everyone, but you have to get the book Post-Traumatic Slavery. And what the author shows us in the book is how we as a people are still traumatized, even though we may not have physically dealt with the hard work, or we may not have physically got the lashes.
Right.
However, we're still traumatized by it. We're still traumatized by it, even as Black men. And when I think about that, and you think about mental health, it weighs on one's mental capacity, you know. And so therefore, as a man, you're taught one thing, you're taught to do this, you're taught to do that, you're taught to do this. And then look what our women go through, you know, watching their husbands, their sons, you know, some of the atrocities that they go through. When the family is torn, then the woman has to step in, and now she has to raise the family. And what's even more troublesome is that when she has to raise her boys. And I've always asked myself, and I'm not downplaying our mothers. Trust me when I tell you, John, I think we have the most beautiful creatures on earth, the Black women. I mean, they have the complete package deal. They got, when I say the complete package, they know how to, they are just phenomenal. So I'm not trying to downplay them at all in no kind of way.
Right.
But I want you to think about this, that for her to take on that responsibility to help a boy become a man, help a boy become a man, especially if that boy or those 2 or 3 boys is living in a home where there is the mother, the older sister, the older sister, the older sister, and the older sister.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think about that picture?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Think about that picture. And that's most of us, if you really think about it. And so then a lot of times, you know, the blame, that mental thing comes back, you know, the fathers, then they start to develop some type of grief or guilt or whatever that eats them away because they feel that they should have been there. They feel that they should have, you know, but they're not even kind of like assessing the situation truly why they were not there. Now, I'm not talking about, John, I'm not talking about that very small percentage of deadbeats. I think that's a small percentage.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That have that deadbeat mentality. That's a very small percentage. But when I think of most of our Black men, I just think that the system and some of the trauma and all of that does not allow them to be Black men, Black fathers. Does not allow them to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank God for our women. Their prayers, their strength, their tenaciousness. I was going to say their discipline, but
hey, I had a couple of friends that mama used to get that switch off the tree. So the discipline definitely. Sometimes it's needed. You already know. You know.
And I think, you know what I think, you know, even when we think about trauma and the whole mentality behind that, I think that a lot of that is promoted out of fear.
Right.
It's promoted out of fear.
I agree 100%.
I believe that they love their children, but when you getting that stenching cord and that switch and all that, you don't see love in that.
Right.
You feeling trauma. So I just think that, you know, it's interesting that you say that. You know, when you mention that, I just think that when I think of mental health and mental, you know, awareness, that's why I think that we need more people of color to the forefront for our people, especially like even in our churches, you know, and all of that, to show them that, hey, look, you're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You're going through a normal life-altering process that's kind of like weighing on you.
That's why I love the fact, I know we can run out of time soon, but I got to put this in. That's why I love the fact of the young lady in the Olympic, Simone, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's
a bold move by her.
Right. To be on that type of stage or that type of platform and level and to do what she did, that that messed me up for a whole day. Like I was like, damn, that's hard. That's not, you know what I mean?
And I'm pretty sure that she had people in her circle telling her, you can't do this. You are Simone. You cannot, people probably with even her family. Do you see what you're about to do to us?
Right.
But this girl's thinking about her health.
Life and death. Like she said, she can make a wrong move and be gone, break her neck or something crazy. You know what I mean? Something simple like that. Man, we're running out of time, of course, but it's been a pleasure, Walter. I have definitely got to get you back on because
Can I just say one thing? Can I just say one thing about the VA and why my thought process changed very, very quickly?
Absolutely.
So the reason John, and to the audience, I was very prejudiced towards the alcohol and drug community, even as a nurse for a very long time. And a lot of it came from what we were talking about tonight, trauma. You know, being abused by an alcoholic. My father's not there because of alcoholism and drugs or whatever. So I had this vindictive hatred towards anybody who I say, oh, they just doing this and or whatever, until I came to the VA and I started getting the backstory. And that's what I encourage the audience to do. you have to sit down and get the backstory.
Right.
And you would be really, really, really amazed and shocked. And when that started happening for me, those experiences, my thought process has totally 360-degree turn change, where I'm much, much more empathetic.
Wow. You know, we have one of my brothers has a show on here. One of the other hosts on What Up Baltimore, Kevin Curry, has a veteran show. I definitely need to hook you two up.
Oh yes,
he is a veteran, you know, and he has a veteran show. I think he does on Fridays. I'm definitely going to hook you up with him. But I appreciate you coming on, man. We definitely have to do this again. Hopefully, I can get you on sometime in September, late September, sometime October.
That would be great.
Yeah, because I want to make this an annual thing. You know,
and I'd like to bring and if you're okay with that, I'd like to bring some other professionals that are in mental health onto the platform as well too, because I know they have a lot to bring to the table as well.
Absolutely, I would love that, bro. I would love that. I love you, my brother. I appreciate you for coming on.
Love
man.
you always, brother.
Absolutely, it's good to see you, man. Say hello to your wife for me. And
I
y'all
definitely will.
out here. Absolutely, stay safe out here. Like I always say, if you want to be blessed, you must bless other people. There's no way we're going to be blessed if we don't bless somebody else. All right, Walter, I love you, bro. I talk to you
too,
soon,
brother.
bro.
All right. Bless.